bombshell draft leak of an opinion written by conservative Justice Samuel Alito indicating that the court was prepared to take this momentous step. So I do want to bring you out to some of the feeds we've got coming from the Supreme Court steps. Protest erupting outside of the building there. You can see the fence across the perimeter of the Supreme Court. More security being put out there right now. Earlier in some of these shots, you saw Capitol police officers trying to make sure that these protests, these rallies remain peaceful right now. And, you know, it's just a decision that we had been waiting for as a nation for weeks, as a couple of days each week, the Supreme Court would announce opinions and rulings in major cases that they were working on. It puts the court at odds with a majority of Americans who favored preserving Roe v. Wade, which is that 1973 landmark case that basically gave and granted women the right to get an abortion. So again, breaking news that we are monitoring for you here on Live Now from Fox, continuing to bring you all of the different vantage points we have coming from our nation's capital. We were just bringing you live to some remarks from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who had already scheduled the 10:45 a.m. weekly press briefing. But basically, when it comes to what this means for our country, I do want to bring you this interactive map. Now, this is something that can really outline each individual state and what residents in that state can expect. So hovering over some of these blue states. So that means that there is going to be no ban on abortion. I can bring you some individual information. So let's head out and start on the West Coast. We've got this mouse hovering over the state of Washington right now. So in the state of Washington, abortion is banned at fetal viability, which is generally 24 to 26 weeks of pregnancy. State Medicaid does fund covering for abortion. Private health insurance plans are required to cover abortion. Qualified healthcare professionals, not solely physicians, can provide abortions, and protections for patients and abortion clinic staff. Now, we can bring you out and go below here to the state of Oregon right now. Now, abortion is not restricted based on gestational age at all. State Medicaid funds actually do cover abortion as well. Private health insurance plans are required to cover abortion. Qualified healthcare professionals, not solely physicians, can provide abortions, and then state funds help patients pay for abortion care and protections for patients and abortion clinics. Now, if we do go to some other states here, let's head out to some more states such as Idaho, for example. So we're hovering over the state of Idaho right now. Now, trigger bans on abortions are designed to take effect automatically or by quick state action if Roe is overturned. So now we have that decision by the nation's highest court, and immediately these trigger laws are going to go into effect. So abortion right now is banned at fetal viability, which is generally that 24 to 26 weeks of pregnancy. Patients forced to wait 24 hours after counseling, not required to be in person actually to obtain an abortion. And state Medicaid coverage of abortion care is banned except in very limited circumstances. Private health insurance of abortion is banned except in very limited circumstances. Parental consent or notice is required for minors' abortion, and only physicians can provide abortions and not other qualified healthcare professionals. So as we hover over some of these states, you can see Nebraska, for example, saying that a ban is already in place. So right now, abortion in Nebraska is banned at 22 weeks and later. Patients forced to wait 24 hours after counseling to obtain an abortion. State Medicaid coverage of abortion care is banned also except for very limited circumstances. Private health insurance of abortion is banned except in very limited circumstances. So again, kind of walking you through the states where we can expect and not expect some of these laws to change. So actually, I do want to head out to New York right now, because immediately after we got that bombshell leak of that opinion draft written by conservative Justice Samuel Alito, we saw New York Governor Kathy Hochul and AG Letitia James actually react rather quickly. And I'm just going to change the size of this for you here so we can also bring you other footage and other live feeds that we are getting into our desk right now. To the right-hand side of your screen, you've got that shot outside of the Supreme Court, and then you've got protests and rallies outside of the Supreme Court all around the perimeter. Now, it's important to mention that to some, this is good news. To some pro-life activists, we even got some reaction from Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, saying that this is a great day for America, that, you know, even babies before viability and, you know, fetuses before viability should be protected. But then you've got other protests erupting outside of, you know, clinics, outside of businesses. We actually can let you know that we are monitoring this shot coming from our Fox 26 Houston chopper headed to a Planned Parenthood protest that is expected to happen here very shortly. Meanwhile, we also do have some coverage coming from our Fox 5 DC team, which I'm going to take you to in just a moment right now. But when it comes to reaction to some of, you know, what is going on right now, we have a monumental decision by the nation's highest court. Unfortunately, this was previewed in a sense by that bombshell leak. This all stemming from a case known as Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, which centered on a Mississippi law that banned abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. A Republican-led state asking the Supreme Court to strike down a lower court ruling that stopped the 15-week abortion ban from taking place. Some of the quotes, some of the text coming from this 200-page opinion report saying, "We end this opinion where we began. Abortion presents a profound moral question. The Constitution does not prohibit the citizens of each state from regulating or prohibiting abortion. Roe and Casey arrogated that authority. We now overrule those decisions and return that authority to the people and their elected representatives." So we do have reaction pouring in on social media. And once again, I can walk you through some of the live feeds that we are getting here into our desk. People gathering outside of the Supreme Court of the United States. And as that is happening, I do want to run you through some of what we are seeing right now on social media. So this is actually coming from Attorney General Eric Schmidt. He said, following the SCOTUS ruling overturning Roe v. Wade, the state of Missouri has just become the first in the country to effectively end abortion with our AG opinion signed moments ago. This is a monumental day for the sanctity of life. So this is what I'm talking about when you see some of these states across the country having these trigger laws and having certain legislation in place to make, you know, moves just like you are seeing right here in this tweet. So basically, to kind of break it down for you when it comes to individual states, 16 states will immediately, including Missouri right here, or in short order, ban abortion in almost all circumstances for residents. Legal disputes are going to be expected in 2 or more states to decide whether abortion bans passed before 1973 can come back into effect or not. 13 states have trigger laws banning abortion that were passed to go into effect when the court overturned Roe. So I do want to just hone in on some of the legislation there in Missouri right now. So basically, Missouri is a state where you can see that this went into effect immediately. Once again, this coming from Attorney General Eric Schmidt saying that Missouri has just become the first in the country to effectively end abortion with our AG opinion signed moments ago. He's saying that this is a monumental day for the sanctity of life. So basically, in upholding Mississippi's law in the state of Missouri, you can expect right what you are seeing right here. In 2019, the Missouri General Assembly actually passed something called House Bill 126, which contains a so-called trigger ban prohibiting nearly all abortions in the state. So these this just kind of a glimpse as to what you could see in hours, if not days to come. Certain states having these trigger laws, which have already been in effect, basically saying that the ban goes into effect as soon as the governor or attorney general certifies that Roe has been overturned, which now about an hour ago, we did just get that official ruling from the after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. So we wanted to bring you this here on Live Now from Fox, specifically since we're focusing in on the state of Missouri. Basically, the trigger law, when you talk about what penalties will Missouri's abortion ban carry, the trigger law makes it a Class B felony to induce an abortion. Class B felonies carry prison sentences of 5 to 15 years. Abortion providers could also have their medical licenses suspended or revoked. Does this law have any exceptions? Well, the law makes no exception for rape or incest. Its only exceptions are for medical emergencies that threaten the life of a pregnant person or, quote, create a serious risk of substantial and irreversible physical impairment of a major bodily function of the pregnant woman. So when we had our guest on earlier, Jessica Waters, who specialized in women's reproductive rights, she said that you can expect this. Although everybody may not agree with it, certain states are likely to make no exceptions for rape or incest. Can someone who tries to get an abortion be prosecuted under Missouri's law? No, the law only applies to abortion providers. So there's that kind of loophole there when it comes to the whole practice as itself. When it comes to a person who self-induces an abortion, the trigger laws stipulate that a woman getting an abortion cannot be charged, like we just mentioned, but it's not entirely clear if that remains the case for self-induced medical abortions, because like we've mentioned several times since this news broke, there are two different types of abortions. There's procedural abortions, and then there is a pill that a woman can take in two different increments that will basically induce an abortion if she is early enough on in the pregnancy. So again, wanted to bring you this news here on Live Now from Fox. Missouri officially becoming the first state in the country to enact their trigger laws, effectively ending abortion, as their AG, Eric Schmidt, basically says that this is a monumental day for sanctity of life. In the event of breaking news like this, as we take you to more vantage points coming from Washington, D.C. right now, we do want to bring you to some of our coverage from our Fox 5 D.C. team. They've got reporters on the grounds, in the streets, interviewing anyone and everyone about their reaction to this monumental news. So let's tap into some of their coverage here on Live Now from Fox.
Joy's t-shirt today. I'm going to put her down. She doesn't want to be in the news
That's okay.
today.
She's grabbing the microphone, and that's all right. Yeah.
I'm horrified. It's really sad to be a person in the United States right now dealing with this, when a fundamental healthcare right, it's not even a right, it's basic healthcare, is no longer accessible. And the truth is, it's not women with means that are going to suffer. It's women without means. In rural places, people without access to care, people without financial resources, and those people will die. And so this was a decision that threw brown and black women and poor women under the bus.
When you think about the fact that this was leaked out earlier, that essentially 7 or 8 weeks, this is sort of what we thought may happen, and now that is officially what's happening. I mean, have you prepared yourself for this moment, or how do you feel now that this is actually happening, that it has been overturned? This moment is here.
How do you prepare to have your fundamental rights ripped away from underneath you? I don't think that's possible. The only things that we can do are figure out how to make sure that this is not something that affects as many people as possible, to protect as many people as possible. I'm working with a group of midwives in Prince George's County to open up a clinic to provide all trimester abortion care there. We know that the district and Maryland will be one of the southernmost places that people can still access safe, legal abortion care. So folks will likely need to travel from southeastern states to receive these life-saving procedures. And I'm horrified. The only thing I could do is cry, be angry, leverage my anger into action by making a lot of donations to a lot of organizations that are ensuring care for people who need it.
When you just talk to people in your community, when you've had conversations over the last several weeks, I'm just kind of curious if there's been, what you hear from your friends. What is the perspective of the people in your life who live in D.C. That this was going to happen, or felt like it was going to happen?
I think it's outrage, frankly, and anger and sadness. What we're talking about is basic health care, basic care for women and people that that have uteruses and people that are capable of reproduction. And that procedure, those life-saving procedures, have been removed. The right to that procedure has been removed, and it's now illegal. My friends that are receiving care for in vitro fertilization, they're concerned about the ramifications of this decision on their care. My friends who are trying to get pregnant but can't are outraged because the truth is that access to abortion is an issue that affects people who are already parents. Most people that receive abortions are already parents. And they know that they don't want to have another child, or they can't handle having another child. And speaking as a person who gave birth only 22 months ago, I know more than ever that the decision to become a parent and when to become a parent and how many children to have is not a decision that anyone else could make for me, because this is the hardest thing I've ever done.
There's a lot of the country that's happy right now with this decision. What do you say to somebody who's on the other side of this issue about this day? How do you communicate to them how you're feeling?
First of all, if they don't want to have an abortion, they shouldn't. But as a person who's Jewish, Judaism says that if my life is in danger, I am commanded to terminate a pregnancy via abortion. So for me, this issue is also a separation of church and state problem, that my rights are being taken away in a way that allows me not to practice my own faith tradition. So for people who are making this decision based on their faith beliefs, they should not receive this procedure if they don't want it. But that has nothing to do with me and my uterus and the decisions that I make about my family. So the first thing I would say is don't have an abortion. And the second thing that I would say is let's do more to make sure that the babies that are born have the care that they need. I just, as the decision was being handed down, was with my daughter across the street getting her first COVID vaccine. This country has not allowed COVID vaccines for people under 5 for very legitimate reasons until the last few days. But that's a great example of how hard it is to be a parent in the United States today. Why are we forcing people to carry pregnancies when they can't afford to have those children or don't want to have those children? I just don't understand. It's really hard to be a parent and take good care of children. Why are we making it harder to plan families?
I really appreciate your perspective and you sharing that with us on short notice. Thank you so much. So there you have definitely one perspective of many of what we're seeing and hearing now that this ruling has come out. So certainly the fallout from this, the impact of this, we will continue to see for days, weeks, and years to come. Back to you.
It's a contentious issue for sure on all sides. Thanks for the latest there in Tinleytown, David. We want to go over now to Jonathan Adler. He's a law professor from Case Western University. Jonathan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you for joining us here. I want to get your first impression on this huge seismic ruling coming down this morning from the Supreme Court.
Well, it's certainly a big deal. The Supreme Court does not overturn prior precedents that often, and when it does, they're usually smaller, more technical sorts of precedents. This is obviously a decision that everyone's heard of, involving an issue that everyone's aware of. So it's certainly a very big deal. It certainly shows that the court, this is a different court than we've seen in quite some time, a court that is more conservative and that is more skeptical of some of the more liberal rulings of the 1960s and 70s. And as a political matter, it takes an issue that's been a flashpoint in our politics, in the politics of judicial nominations and confirmations for decades now, and returns it to the political process. So here in Ohio, it's certainly going to be a political issue. It will be political issues in legislative races, in judicial races at the state level, and potentially in congressional races as well, as now the field is clear if Congress wants to try and legislate in this area as well.
Jonathan, we'll get back to the state level in just a minute there. Obviously, you're in Ohio at Case Western University, and certainly a state that could see some movement on this. But I want to talk about the political situation at the highest level, and that being the Supreme Court, because for so long, you looked at the Supreme Court as not taking a political stance, but essentially trying to look at things from a matter of fact. Obviously, opinion is there, and interpretation is always going to be there when it comes to anything that involves the Constitution. But do you feel that this has, first of all, that the court has become more of a political machine now, the Supreme Court, and second of all, if this opens the door for perhaps it to become even more so in the political direction?
Well, so here's the thing. So those who dislike today's opinion and today's decision view this as the court being political and the court doing the agenda or fulfilling the agenda of of the conservative movement, of Republicans that put conservative justices on the court. For those who agree with today's opinion, this is actually the court taking itself out of one of the most contentious political issues in our nation. Justice Kavanaugh, in a separate concurrence, makes the argument that the Constitution is neutral on this question, like it is on lots of fundamental questions about what the law should be. And so for those who support this decision, what the court is doing is taking it out of a political dispute and letting politics resolve it. And, this is one of those issues where, depending on which side you are on about the case, you're not going to see the way the folks on the other side are viewing it. But that's the fundamental divide about this issue, and it's the divide we see about the opinion as well.
We have our Fox 5 Insta poll coming up here. Did the Supreme Court make the right decision? So far, pretty close. 57% of you saying no and 43% as yes. But Jonathan,
all right, everybody, you are streaming live now from Fox on this Friday, June 24th. In major breaking news instances just like this one, we are able to bring you full-blown coverage from our owned and operated stations broadcast if we do have a station in that area. So as we have experts joining our Fox 5 DC's air, you've also got the reporters out in the streets, something we in the news business like to call MOS, man on street interviews, really speaking with anybody walking about our nation's capital as this monumental decision from our nation's highest court just came through here on Live Now from Fox within the hour. It was the second opinion released by the Supreme Court in what was said to be and officially confirmed yesterday as this added day of opinion releases. So there was a huge question as Americans awaited this ruling in a case stemming from Jackson's Women's Health Organization versus Dobbs, centered on a Mississippi law that banned abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. And something that is really cool about our show here is when news breaks, we are able to bring you a front row seat to what is happening around the country. So this is actually a live vantage point that we are getting from outside of Jackson's Women's Health Center, or I should say Jackson Women's Health Organization out there in Mississippi. If many of you didn't know, this is actually the only abortion clinic in the state. So it was the nation's highest court, the Supreme Court, versus this one health clinic. And it was just at 10 a.m. Eastern time that the Supreme Court officially overturned Roe V Wade, effectively ending recognition of a constitutional right to abortion and giving individual states the power to allow, limit, or ban the practice altogether. And while I say that, before we bring on a live guest here for some more reaction, I do want to take you out to this breaking news out of the state of Missouri. So that was a huge angle that we had been covering first following that draft leak that was issued at the beginning of May, suggesting exactly what is happening right now, a conservative majority of the justices ruling in favor to overturn Roe v. Wade. Well, a lot of states in our nation having something called trigger laws. So that includes Missouri. And right here in front of you, the Attorney General Eric Schmidt officially making Missouri the first state in the country to effectively end abortion with an opinion signed moments ago. He's calling this a monumental day for the sanctity of life. So that's something that we've been monitoring too. Continued reaction on this Supreme Court decision. So some saying that this is a horrible day for our nation. We actually did monitor some reaction, and something that stuck out to me, a woman saying we have less rights in this generation than our parents and grandmothers did. So again, continuing to monitor reaction. I do want to bring on a live guest to our show right now who is joining us out of the state of Tennessee. His name is Dr. John Weil, and he is actually joining us from Middle State University out there in Tennessee. Dr. Weil, thank you so much for joining the program in the wake of this breaking news. I hope you're doing okay. First, right off the bat, your initial reaction to this decision by the nation's highest court.
Well, of course, we had some inkling because of the leak of what Alito's opinion would say. And as far as I can tell, it's pretty much the original, only had some responses to the dissenters. What we now know is that Justice Roberts, it's actually a 5-1-3 decision, 6 agreeing to overturn the current law. But Roberts would simply have stated that the 15-week point is okay without saying all laws against abortion are
And, you know, when you talk about laws in individual states, I think that's a huge question that everybody has right now, Dr. Vial, is what happens where I am living. And, you know, while we mentioned this as well, we literally just got into our desk moments ago, the Attorney General in Missouri officially making that state the first in the country to effectively end abortion as the AG signs that opinion. First off, Dr. Vial, you're joining us from Middle State University in Tennessee. Can you talk about what the laws in Tennessee are regarding women's abortion rights?
right. It's my understanding is that we have a trigger law that is very similar to that of Missouri. And I don't know if it actually officially needs a signature or what you're seeing is more symbolic than anything. But my understanding is that we have a provision that says if Roe versus Wade is repealed, then abortion, at least at some point, is illegal. Now, the one thing that there may be a little bit of ambiguity in today's case, the majority seems to say that, or 5 justices seem to say that all the decisions are now at the state level. But Justice Roberts certainly suggests that he might be amenable to, you know, I don't know if it's that he thinks the 15-week restraint is reasonable, but he may or may not think the same if it were shorter than that. So, and I think many state laws probably do not outlaw abortion completely, but may have a 12-week or a 15-week or the heartbeat or brainwave or some other kind of standard. So there'll be a lot of variation, at least initially.
Yeah, you know, and when it comes to certain laws in certain states, I mean, we've kind of been going through an interactive map of, you know, people joining us all over the country, them asking what is going to happen where I am living. Really, I want to ask you on the legality of this situation, Dr. Vial. Will women or doctors now get arrested for having or performing an abortion in some of these states?
That's going to, you know, that's a matter of state criminal law. Some states, I believe, only are criminalizing the activity of doctors themselves. But the Texas law, if I recall, is phrased so that you might even be liable for criminal prosecution if you drive an Uber and take somebody to a facility where she would have an abortion. So again, I think this is going to be, we're always looking for something clean. You get an opinion and it solves everything. But, even if you outlaw abortion, and no matter what penalties you have, you'll certainly have women probably going from one state to another that does permit it. And judging from pre-Roe, we'll probably have illegal abortions.
Dr. Weil, we have had on several guests since this news first broke over an hour ago. And something that our last guest said that stuck out to me is this is happening because of politics. This is happening because a majority of the justices on the Supreme Court are conservative. What do you make of that statement?
Well, I think it's true. On the other hand, I think one could make much the same argument about Roe versus Wade. The court, that was actually a 7-2 decision. It wasn't the issue of abortion hadn't been quite politicized right and left in the way that it is today. But, judges do their best, I think, to interpret the law and interpret the Constitution, but they're not monks. They have wives and daughters, and they listen to the news, and certainly if they don't, they get a lot of information presented to them in briefs.
And, Dr. Weil, now that the Supreme Court has overruled Roe versus Wade, do you feel that in states that are going to keep their abortion rights active, right when we got that bombshell opinion draft leak, we saw New York Governor Kathy Hochul, their attorney general, immediately putting laws into place that would protect not only abortion clinics, abortion doctors there and performers in the state, but also the rights of women who are now probably going to be crossing over state lines to get an abortion outside of their state. Do you feel that is going to be more common, and that abortion clinics in some of these protected states are going to see an influx and possibly longer wait times?
I think there will be. I mean, this actually was happening before Roe versus Wade. One of the arguments for it was that the law was unfair to poor people. A person of middle income or upper income could easily afford, or more easily afford, the time and the money that it might take to go to another state, whereas poor women could not.
And, when it comes to the states that are keeping abortions legal, what do you make of some of the remarks that we are seeing? We've gotten continued reaction from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, some saying that this is a horrible day for our nation's history, and some saying that this is a great day. So, are we going to continue to see that reaction split down the middle?
I think so. I mean, it will, in some ways, it will probably further the divide between red and blue states, with red states being more likely, particularly I would say in the South and the Midwest, more likely either to outlaw abortion altogether or make it fairly restrictive. And many of the red states, continuing, perhaps even liberalizing a little bit their current laws. Well, Kavanaugh has a very interesting concurring opinion in which he basically says, I know some people are going to say what the court should have done is outlaw abortion. And he says very clearly, this is not what we're doing. We're not saying the Constitution requires or outlaws it. We're simply saying it's a matter for the people of the states.
And, I'm glad that you mentioned conservative Justice Brett Kavanaugh, because now we've seen this opinion, this ruling from the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. But even before this, when we first got that leaked opinion draft, we saw protests erupt across the nation, even leading to an assassination attempt of Justice Brett Kavanaugh. What do you make of the reaction that we have seen since the beginning of May?
Well, this this is strongly contested, and politicians on both sides of the aisle have to decide, is this something they want to stress, or do they think other issues are going to be more important?
And, we did just get a feed coming from the White House, Dr. Weil. We got word that President Biden is going to speak at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time on the Supreme Court's decision. Any insight and any predictions into what you think President Biden will say?
Well, my guess is that he will be disappointed in the decision. He ran basically as a pro-choice candidate. My guess is that he will encourage those states that have relatively liberal abortion laws to keep them. He might, you had mentioned earlier the prospect of women crossing state lines. One might be able to assert federal authority to prevent someone from being punished for going across state lines for purposes of abortion. That would probably be more a congressional action than a presidential, but that would be my first thoughts on it.
We are continuing to monitor reaction, Dr. Weil. I don't have a specific picture up right now of this social media, post that we just got. Obviously, Amy Coney Barrett, one of the conservative justices chosen under former President Donald Trump. We're getting this tweet in from Donald Trump Jr., Donald Trump's son, saying, "Proud of my father for what he has accomplished today. He gave our movement 3 strong pro-life Supreme Court justices, and despite the Dems and the left-wing media doing everything they could do to stop their confirmations, especially with Kavanaugh, he never wavered." Actually, it does look like we are getting that here right now for you. So your initial reaction to this post, Dr. Weil?
It's not surprising. I mean, I think one of the explanations for why the evangelical and to some extent Roman Catholics have stuck by Donald Trump is that he did sort of, make this promise that he was going to appoint pro-life justices, and they seem to have come through for him. I think what complicates this is that there are many that think, that Obama's choice of Merrick Garland should have been considered by the Senate and was not, and that also think that Amy Coney Barrett's nomination was rushed through. But certainly if you're looking at, did Trump deliver on what he promised? Yes, in this case he did.
I feel like we've had a lot of reaction kind of say that history is repeating itself in a number of instances. So when it comes to seeing a majority of conservative Supreme Court justices overturning Roe v. Wade today, do you feel that we could see a more liberal Supreme Court in the future go back and reverse what is happening now?
That's always the danger, isn't it? I mean, for either way, that, if you have a court that if it flip-flops every 4 or 5 years, then that undermines stability. And, much of the Supreme Court's decision in this case was devoted to the doctrine of stare decisis, letting the precedent stand and making arguments why it wasn't appropriate in this case. In some ways, I think it's sad when the court is this politicized, either on the right or on the left. It's probably notable that, Justice Roberts concurred in the opinion concurred in the ruling without concurring in the judgment, and probably did so because he felt like a 6-3 decision would be less likely to be overturned than if he, did a separate concurring and dissenting opinion, sort of splitting the difference.
Well, Dr. Weil, we really appreciate you coming onto the program. As this news has just broke, as we're expected to see a lot of reaction, a lot of laws being enacted in these individual states. Any last words before we send you off?
No, other than, this has been a very consequential decision. We still have a couple more to come, by the way. To my knowledge, the prayer case coming out of California, the football player, has not yet been decided, and there was a fairly there've been some other fairly consequential decisions this week. But usually the Supreme Court winds things up in the last week of June, and my guess is probably by next Thursday, the session will probably end.
All right, well, we have Dr. John Weil with Middle Tennessee State University here on the program, weighing in on a landmark decision by the nation's highest court. Dr. Weil, we so appreciate your insight. Thank you so much,
pleasure.
and we'll definitely be talking to you soon.
Sounds great. Get back.
All right, everybody. Regina Gonzalez with you here on Live Now from Fox. It has been quite a busy last couple of hours at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The nation's highest court officially changing and really altering abortion rights for women here in the United States. It was breaking news that we have been on here for quite some time now, overturning Roe v. Wade, effectively ending recognition. We can take you to their full broadcast. So that's what I'm going to do right now. We're going to bring you out live to our Fox 5 DC's air. They have experts joining the show. They have reporters out on the streets in our nation's capital, interviewing people, getting their reaction to this decision by the Supreme Court. So let's listen in here, live, raw, and unfiltered on Live Now from Fox. Also, before we do that, I do just want to let you know that speaking of reaction and coming from our nation's capital, I do want to let you know that President Biden is going to be speaking at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time here. So just about 45 minutes. Here's a look at the White House right now. We are going to hear remarks from President Biden at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time regarding this decision by the Supreme Court. It's likely something that our Fox 5 DC team is about to mention. They are continuing interviewing people there out on the ground in our nation's capital. Let's listen in here on Live Now from Fox.
So far, there's a pretty sizable crowd out here, but nothing too crazy. Everything has remained peaceful. How does today feel compared to some of those other historic days?
Smaller crowd on both sides.
Any idea why you think that is?
I think everybody understood what the preordained outcome was going to be.
And that is perhaps because of that leaked draft opinion that so far tracks pretty closely to what the majority decision today was from the same author of the draft. Today's final majority decision, Justice Samuel Alito, again overturning the constitutional right to choose to have an abortion. We'll continue to bring you coverage here outside the court as the crowd continues to gather. Still a pretty small crowd generally, as he said, not as big as even some of the other major opinion days, but as people get to their lunch hour and get word of the historic nature of today's decision and head down to the court, we'll of course keep you updated.
Absolutely. And also I think that
Good morning, and thanks again for being here with us on Live Now from Fox. Just one of the many shots we have coming to us from outside of the Supreme Court, where earlier here today, their ruling did come down, overturning Roe v. Wade. We have been getting reaction pouring in from across the country, including representatives from both sides of the aisle, state leaders from both sides of the issue as well. So thanks so much for being here with us. We do have right now Representative Adam Schiff. He is speaking with our Fox 11 LA team. Let's go ahead, listen into that right here, live, run, unfiltered, on Live Now from Fox.
Outweigh adherence to an old rule called the filibuster, which requires a supermajority to get certain things through the Senate. Well, what's more important, this old rule that is not a constitutionally based rule, that is, it's not required in any way, it's just a tradition. Is that tradition more worthwhile, more important than the health care of millions of women? I certainly don't think so, and I would hope and pray that the senators don't think so. There is a pro-choice majority in the Senate. The question is there a majority willing to do away with a filibuster to actually make that meaningful? And we have to press, and we have to fight, and we have to do everything possible to persuade those senators this has to get done. It's more urgent than ever.
Congressman Schiff, I want to investigate a little bit more the statement you made about the Supreme Court, which many people believe has effectively done away with the right to privacy. And that opens up the door for perhaps doing away with other rights, recently acquired rights. Some who, in fact, are pro-life say that people who are pro-abortion rights are overreacting by saying it's going to result in a lot of other rights being abridged. But in his concurring opinion, and Araxia showed me this, Justice Clarence Thomas said that he thinks the Supreme Court should actually revisit other rights, including the right to use contraceptive, including the right to have marriage equality. So you do believe, in fact, that other rights could, in fact, be abridged as a result of the Supreme Court decision today?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, Justice Thomas, as you say, makes that very clear. And this is part of the same backward social agenda, extremist social agenda that brought us this decision to begin with. This is why these justices were picked. And, you know, for those millions of Americans who never thought we would see this day, you know, well, they've shown they're willing to do this. They're willing to throw out all of this precedent. They're willing to roll back rights for the first time in our history. Why should we believe that this is the only right they're going to roll back? That would be, I think, dangerously naive. And so I think we need to make sure that we protect these rights, we enshrine them in law beyond the reach of this partisan court. And I also think, because this court stands ready to do away with other Americans' rights, and two of those justices were illegitimately placed on the court, one by preventing President Obama from making appointments, and the second from forcing a justice on the court while people were voting for Joe Biden, in contradiction of what McConnell had said the first time, that we ought to expand the court and unstack the court so that the court is more reflective of the views of the American people.
Congressman Schiff, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you racing to your office to connect with us. And we know you're going to have a very, very busy day. So thank you for taking time to be with us. We'll let you go. And you know what? We're going to have Alex, I believe, if he's ready. Alex Michelson, familiar face here, obviously, on Good Day LA. He anchors the evening shows. He also anchors the political show on our station every Friday today at 10:30.
The issue is?
This is going to be the issue, of course, for a long time to come. Alex, I've been monitoring you, as I often do on social media, and right away you went on to talk about why local elections matter. This is why we all should care about things we don't think matter until the bigger picture happens.
Yeah, I mean, so often a lot of these political fights are conceptual, and I think we've gotten so used to faux outrage on social media where people go to their corners, but it really doesn't result in much. And this is proof that elections have consequences, both on the national level, because it is objectively true that if Donald Trump had not been elected in 2016 and appointed 3 justices to the Supreme Court, this day would not be happening. If Hillary Clinton had won in 2016, this would not be happening. So that's the proof that national elections matter, but also that local elections matter, which so often do not get that much attention, which so often have very low voter turnout. This is proof that California will look entirely different than a state like Texas or Mississippi when it comes to abortion rights, and potentially going forward on other rights as well. I mean, we should point out, even though Congressman Schiff just made that point about a lot of other rights could fall too, the actual ruling itself makes clear that this only applies to abortion. Don't misinterpret this to go to other rights when it comes to privacy. That Clarence Thomas decision was an isolated decision. He was the only one that put that out. Nobody joined him on it. He would need to get 4 other people to join him to do that. But it will be interesting to see all the different ways that this plays out around the country. And what California does now, this is something they've been planning for months and months, and now they will be executing that plan.
But it is, in fact, interesting. I mean, and you're absolutely right. Justice Thomas's concurring opinion is just that. It's his opinion, and it's concurring with the majority with his own twist.
Right.
To the opinion. That's basically what it is, and it doesn't in and of itself carry an authority, but it does open that door, Alex.
It does, and there are people that believe that, and Justice Thomas clearly is one of them. It seems right now he doesn't have the votes, but it is the idea of the pro-life movement or anti-abortion rights movement, depending on how you want to call it, that they want to see a national ban on abortion. This was the first step to have Roe v. Wade be struck down, which sends it back to the states. But they want there to be a national ban on abortion, and that will be the next move for that movement. And then you will see places like California pushing back hard. One of the things that California is looking at doing, this is something I talked with Attorney General Rob Bonta about yesterday, and he's a supporter of this, is a bill that would make it easier for people to come here from other states to essentially create a fund, including with some taxpayer dollars, to help pay for people, women in other states that where abortions are outlawed soon, to come to California, help pay their travel expenses, and help pay for their abortions.
All right, guys. So once again, thanks so much for being here with us on Live Now from Fox. Wanted to show a live picture of the White House since we do know President Biden will be speaking here today at 12:30 Eastern Time. Did want to let our viewers know, of course, we're going to be on top of that as soon as we get some of those cameras inside of the White House. We will, of course, be bringing that to you right here on Live Now from Fox. Also, still waiting for more reaction to come on Capitol Hill. We do still have a shot inside of the Capitol. We just heard earlier today from Nancy Pelosi. We've also heard waiting for possibly Representative Kevin McCarthy, and many other leaders have already been speaking out here today. Do want to continue playing out just some more reaction following this ruling that happened just a little bit earlier here this morning. We did have our camera crews catch up with Representative Jamie Raskin. Let's go ahead, listen into his remarks right here for you, again on Live Now from Fox.
I'm Jamie Raskin from Maryland's beautiful 8th Congressional District.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, as a constitutional lawyer, what is your take on what happened at the Supreme Court today and yesterday?
Well, the court toppled more than a half century of legal precedent upholding a woman's right to choose an abortion in consultation with her physician and her family and her conscience. You know, if Justice Thomas is to be believed in his decision, he's targeting a lot of other privacy decisions as well, because Roe versus Wade depended upon Griswold versus Connecticut, which upheld the right of all women, including married women, to access contraception. That is now being put up for grabs as the same right-wing forces that targeted abortion are targeting contraception as well. You know, the Obergefell and the right of gay people to get married also depends on this constitutional right to privacy. So it's a terrible day in terms of American jurisprudence, and even worse day for the women of America.
And what do you think is going to be the fallout from the right to privacy being broken down here?
Well, you know, I mean, if you believe the framers, you know, one incursion into the liberties and rights of the people will lead to the next and will lead to the next. So it's a wake-up moment for the American public to reject this assault on the healthcare rights of women. I mean, the idea of government-compelled childbirth is completely anathema to people who have believed in the right to make their own decisions.
Do you think that this is a sign the court has become politicized, that it's a political body as opposed to...
Yeah, it might be a little clue that that's happened. I mean, I think that the Republicans just bought the Tortilla Coast building on the corner of First Street, Southeast. I think maybe the Supreme Court should move in there for a while because they're basically acting as an adjunct to the Republican Party.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Oh, also, really quick, sorry, while I've got you, on January 6th, are there going to be more revelations coming?
All right, so once again, Representative Jamie Raskin there, the representative from Maryland, speaking about all of the opinions that are coming down here today, especially the Roe v. Wade decision. I do want to remind everyone, President Biden going to be making some remarks a little bit later here this morning. Live Now from Fox going to be right on top of that here for you, especially as we've been getting reaction from many of our leaders across the country. I'm going to take us out now to Illinois, where we did have just a little bit ago, not only Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, but also Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. They both were reacting to this news that happened just earlier here today. Obviously, both of them on the Democratic side, upset with today's decision. Let's go ahead, listen into that right here for you as we continue our full coverage right here on Live Now from Fox. We're going to take you out to Fox 32 Chicago, who had Lori Lightfoot's remarks from just earlier here today.
Under any circumstances, these rights are hard fought. These rights are in the spirit of who we are as Americans. We're not going to go back to a day when women do not have bodily autonomy. We're not going to go back to a day where interracial marriage is vilified. We will not go back to a day when gay men in loving each other is treated as criminal act. And we will not retreat from same-gender marriage. We're not going backwards. So we're going to get people activated, we're going to mobilize, and we're going to fight with all our heart to make sure that the American promise of equal justice under law is real, that it is living and breathing in our country today. So while this decision is angering and frustrating, it's a momentary setback. And we will be even more determined and more adamant to make sure that our rights are respected under law. We're not going backwards. And if the Supreme Court wants to continue to be a politicized organization which delegitimizes itself in the institution, which derobs it of any credibility or legitimacy, so be it. But what I know and what I am committed to making sure is that the city of Chicago remains a justice for all city. So I want to say to women out there in states where the trigger laws are going to go into effect here in the coming days and weeks, you have sanctuary in the city of Chicago. We respect your rights, we support your rights, and we will be here for you. I want people to look all across this country at the states that are going to weaponize this decision against women, against trans members of our community, against the Black and Asian and other minorities. The fight to make sure that our civil rights are respected is not over, and we are not yielding any ground without making sure that we are ready and fighting every single day for our rights. So in Chicago and other cities across the country, we will stand as beacons of light for what our country should be standing for is equal justice under law. We will not retreat. We will fight, fight, fight. So thank you. Happy to entertain any questions that you might have. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Listening there to Mayor Lightfoot saying that, yeah, we are not going backwards. You can hear the passion. Possibly don't want to read too much into her emotion, but you can hear the frustration in her voice there as well. She was reacting to the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the implications that it could have on other parts of Americans' lives.
So we've heard from. All right. So thanks again to our Fox 32 team for getting us those remarks. Did want to show people just some of those pictures we have coming in here outside of the Supreme Court. We've been seeing ever since this ruling came down, more and more people starting to gather on both sides of the issue. We've seen signs and people gathering who are on the pro-choice side, also people who are on the pro-life side as well. Do want to show people also just a few other shots we have coming in here. Still waiting for Representative Kevin McCarthy. He is going to be making some remarks any moment now. Plus, we do expect to hear from leaders like Nancy Pelosi as well as others who will be speaking here outside of Capitol Hill as well. So live now from Fox, going to be bringing you all of these feeds, especially when President Biden speaks. He is set to speak here in about a half hour, set to speak at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, we're going to continue our full coverage. No breaks here for you as we continue to give you more reaction. Going to take us out to Minnesota, where we did have just a little bit ago, Senator Amy Klobuchar. She is on the Democratic side for Minnesota. She was speaking with other lawmakers in Minnesota after this ruling came down this morning. Let's go ahead, listen into that right here on Live Now from Fox.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. And it's so wonderful to be back with such good friends, Paula and Lolita, and new friends. And I want to thank you, Mike, for your leadership. This Domestic Violence Service Center wouldn't be here except for you. It started when you were here. I simply carried the torch on, did some expansions here and there. And I want to just thank you for your foresight. You were way ahead of your time in taking on violence that so often was at the time thought of, well, that's just behind closed doors. And our job right now is really taking on the next step, which is the fact that so many of the domestic violence victims, sadly, it doesn't end with one incident. It gets worse. And 600 women a year are killed by guns, by a domestic partner. And so I'm going to talk about what happened last night and the celebration that we should be having today because this important gun violence package has finally passed for the first time in decades. But I must start by addressing the fact that the Supreme Court of the United States just reversed 50 years of settled precedent, 50 years of precedent, Roe v. Wade. And this is something that I don't think, especially...
All right, guys, you can see here live, we do have some of our GOP leaders speaking in the Capitol, especially as they all come to make some remarks following this decision. Let's go ahead, listen in live here on Live Now from Fox.
Good morning. I am honored to be here today with my fellow House Republican colleagues. Today's historic Supreme Court decision is a victory for the sanctity of life. It will save countless innocent children. House Republicans are incredibly grateful for the pro-life movement's tireless efforts for decades, leading to this day to give a voice to the voiceless and protect our most vulnerable, unborn babies. As a new mom, I know there is nothing more extraordinary than the miracle of life. Hearing Sam's heartbeat for the first time, I'm gonna cry, was the greatest blessing and gift for our family. And I stand unified with my Republican colleagues in protecting and promoting the right to life. I'm proud to introduce a pro-life leader and our ranking member of Energy and Commerce, Cathy Mcmorris Rogers.
First of all, I thank God for this day. Thank God that his mercies are new each day, and he is the giver of life. And I ask for the next 50 years and beyond in our country, how are we going to define the greatest human rights issue of our generation? This Supreme Court decision marks a chance for us to restore hope and healing to every family in this country, moms and children at every stage of life. And may it begin with each one of us doing our part to protect and celebrate all life in this greatest experiment greatest experiment in self-governance that the world has ever known. However, Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats are forcing an extreme agenda on America through their Abortion on Demand Until Birth Act. It would nationalize abortion all across this nation, making America just as radical as China and North Korea. It legalizes discriminatory abortions at every stage based upon sex, race, or disability. It overrides state laws that protect women from coercion. There's no part of this that celebrates the life, the dignity, the value of every life. I think about my friend, Chloe. Chloe is a beautiful, smart young lady with Down syndrome. And at 18, she's appeared before the UN twice and spoken. And she told the world, embrace, don't erase Down syndrome. She's helped pass laws at the state level that would make sure that parents, when they receive that prenatal diagnosis of having a baby with Down syndrome, that they would actually get accurate information as to the potential of that life. Democrats want to eliminate laws like Chloe's. We must stand together and say, enough. The court affirmed today that every life is worth living. My hope, my prayer is that America will reclaim our identity as a nation whose God-given rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. And I'm pleased to introduce a gentleman who's made it his life's mission to protect life and reclaim life in America, Chris Smith, gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you so much. Today, ladies and gentlemen, is a brand new opportunity to defend the weakest and most vulnerable from the violence of abortion. And that includes the baby and the mother, the co-victim of every abortion. For decades, right up to this very moment, abortion advocates have gone to extraordinary lengths to ignore, trivialize, and cover up the battered baby victim. They've aggressively fostered a culture of denial, disrespect, a culture of death, and a bias against babies. You know, back in 1973, the Supreme Court, in an infamous decision called Roe v. Wade, which you all know about, said we need not resolve the difficult question of when human life begins. They sidestepped it and then legalized abortion throughout pregnancy. Justice Byron White at the time called that an exercise in raw judicial power. The Alito majority opinion issued today, just a couple of hours ago, at long last recognizes the need for elected representatives at the local and federal level to take the action about abortion. Hopefully it'll be on the side of protection, but as Kathy Mcmorris said a moment ago, there is a bill pending right now that is an existential threat to the lives and dignity of unborn children. It would allow abortion right till birth and would eviscerate every single modest pro-life policy from women's right to know laws to parental notification statutes throughout the entire country. It passed the House last September. Every one of us voted and spoke against it, and it's pending in the Senate. So while this is a major step forward, it also means that we're in an area where we've got to fight even harder to defend these innocent children. And again, as I think all of you know, with ultrasound, the visibility of an unborn child is more apparent than ever before. The other side says it's not a human being. Well, what is it that you're watching? When mothers give birth to a new baby, long before that, what are the pictures that are on the refrigerator? The pictures of the ultrasound of that unborn child. Birth is an event that happens to each and every one of us. It's not the beginning of life, and we want to protect all life from womb to tomb. Thank you. It's my honor to introduce Ann Wagner, who's the prime sponsor of the Born Alive Act. Ann.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I am. I'm Ann Wagner, and I represent Missouri's 2nd Congressional District. And I will say today, as a mother and a grandmother, I am so incredibly grateful and gratified that the Supreme Court has finally overturned Roe v. Wade. This is an historic moment for families, for mothers, and for the precious unborn children who cannot protect themselves. Today, we do give voice to the voiceless. I have always been clear that every child deserves a chance to live. I will always stand for life. And I am hopeful that the state legislatures across the country will take action and swiftly pass protections for our vulnerable babies. Democrats' radical pro-abortion agenda has been forced on Americans for far too long, nearly 50 years. Democrats, as has been stated in the U.S. House and Senate, support abortion on demand up to the moment of birth and even the minute after, at taxpayers' expense. That position is simply unconscionable and incompatible with the views of most Americans. This decision is a victory for the pro-life movement and for the generations of Americans who never gave up hope. People like my mother-in-law, Loretta Wagner, who started this in 1973, founded Missouri Right to Life, a pregnancy center called Our Lady's Inn, the March for Life on the state capitol, helped write the Hyde Amendment with Henry Hyde. It is generations of Americans who are so happy that that they haven't or never gave up hope. That's what I would say, that the Supreme Court would do what is right and return this issue to the states. It will save countless innocent lives. We are entering a new era of freedom for the unborn, and I am proud to have always been on the side of my pro-life brothers and sisters who stand here with me today and all across America. We always knew we would realize true freedom for all Americans. I thank you, and it is my pleasure and my honor to introduce a pro-life advocate, gentlelady from Minnesota, Michelle Fischbach.
And thank you very much. This is certainly a day that pro-lifers have been waiting for 49 years. Today's Supreme Court decision was a step to protect the most precious and basic right, the right to life. Roe v. Wade was unconstitutional. The pro-life community has always known this. Every innocent life is precious, from conception until natural death. But for nearly 5 decades, abortion has remained one of the biggest tragedies of our nation. Roe put judges in charge of abortion policy, imposing laws legislated by unelected judges that left Americans with no voice. Now, the American people will be able to decide the issue of abortion through their elected officials. This is what democracy looks like. Elected leaders accountable to the people they represent, that propose and pass laws that people support. The Constitution gives the people this job, and the people are ready to protect life. Thank you very much, and it is my honor to introduce Representative Julia Letlow.
I want to begin today by recognizing the historic significance of this one moment in time. Today's ruling is an answer to prayers and a shining beacon of hope for the American people. We are here because of nearly 5 decades our strong pro-life advocates never wavered in their commitment for life. This journey has had many, many ups and downs, but they never gave up. Their faith and perseverance has been our movement's guiding light. We are here today because of them. This is their day, their victory, one I never thought I would see in my lifetime, and our country owes them a tremendous debt of gratitude. When we talk about what we have fought for, it is this simple truth: every soul is precious and deserves life. As a mom, I can tell you the bond that grows between you and your child over those 9 months is a sacred miracle. It is something you feel in every moment, from the second you find out you're expecting to months later when you watch your precious and innocent child take those first beautiful breaths. While today is a monumental win for the unborn, I would like to note that being pro-life is about more than saving a child's life. It's a commitment to supporting our mothers. As policymakers, we must work together to bring forward legislation that helps families build nurturing home environments where children thrive and build healthy and happy lives. In today's ruling, the Supreme Court made the right decision by moving this debate to where it belongs, in the hands of the people's representatives. And while we know that much work lies ahead, let us take this moment and honor this history that we are witnessing in our own moment in time. Years from now, we will tell our children and grandchildren about the day when the United States finally and firmly stood for life. Thank you, and I yield to my new member, Representative Mayra Flores from Texas.
Hallelujah. I woke up this morning praying for this, and I never thought that it would happen. This was a big win, not only for South Texas, because we are pro-life, somos pro vida, but it's also a big win for our country. if we want to see real change in bringing crime down, we need to raise a generation to respect life in the womb. Esta victoria es para nuestra comunidad hispana. Y si tanto orgullo tenemos de nuestra gente, debemos de defender la vida. Si tanto orgullo tenemos de nuestra cultura, de nuestros valores, de nuestras raíces, debemos de defender nuestra gente. Porque la vida no tiene precio. Thank you so much. And now, Whip Steve Scalise, que siempre ha defendido la vida también. Es un orgullo para mí presentarlo, porque necesitamos más personas como él, que entiende el valor no solamente de nuestra comunidad aquí en este país, pero que defiende la vida de nuestra comunidad hispana, que para mí es muy valiosa. Siempre tendré orgullo de donde soy, de quién soy, de mi familia. Gracias, Steve Scalise, por siempre defender la vida de nuestra comunidad. Thank you for always defending the life of the unborn.
Thank you so much, Lara. What an historic day this is, and what a great victory for life. And it's not just a victory for life, it's a victory for millions of people who have been part of this pro-life movement for decades, who have gone to state legislatures, who have gotten involved in the political process, who've prayed, and prayers were answered today. The decades of work is celebrated today, but the work just begins now to go and protect life even more, because the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe v. Wade, correcting that flawed decision, finally allows states and Congress to protect life in ways that we never were able to for the last 50 years. That debate was silenced during the years Roe v. Wade was the law of the land, but that debate just begins again in so many places in this country. You know, one of the most inspirational days of the year is the March for Life. It's a day where thousands of young people come to Washington, not to cause violence, but to celebrate life and to pray and work that we can end abortion in this country. Because for many of them, the first picture they have of themselves is in their mother's womb. And so when we celebrate this victory, I think back to 2006 when I was a state representative in Louisiana, and I co-authored a law that I wondered if I would ever see implemented. That law says if Roe v. Wade is overturned, then abortion would end in Louisiana. It was signed by our Democrat governor, Kathleen Babineau-Blanco. Because you see, life across this country has been a bipartisan battle. People in the pro-life movement have been bipartisan. When you see the debate up here, unfortunately, it's become partisan because the far left has tried to shut down this debate. But in so many states, Republicans and Democrats come together to support life. And I'm so proud to say that right now, in my state, that law from 2006, even strengthened by recent actions, will now become law today. I wondered if I would see that, but I now see that moment. And about a dozen other states are going to have their similar laws take effect right now on this historic day. And many other states are going to start a renewed debate that had been shut down for decades, but finally begins anew. God bless life. God answers prayers. And with that, let me bring up our leader, Kevin McCarthy.
Only a few of us are speaking today, but I hope you acknowledge everyone who's standing behind us. I hope you acknowledge everybody who's sitting at home, saying the exact same words that we are. You know, today's Supreme Court decision in Dobbs is the most important pro-life ruling in American history. By a vote of 6-3, the court affirmed that the power to protect unborn life is returned to the people and their elected representatives. The people have won a victory. The right to life has been vindicated. The voiceless will finally have a voice. This great nation can now live up to its core principle that all are created equal, not born equal, created equal. Americans celebrate this historic victory because we know it will save the lives of millions of children and it will give families hope. But as encouraging as today's decision is, our work is far from done. Americans remain one of only 7 countries on earth that allow elective abortions in the 3rd trimester. Of those 7 countries that America's one of them, there's 2 others, China and North Korea. That is radical. The House Democrats continue to support it against the wishes of the American people. This Congress, every House Democrat has voted for extreme policies, like taxpayer-funded abortion on demand until the point of birth. But Democrats' radical agenda does not have America's support. To the contrary, America rejects it because they remain committed to our values and our principles. The Supreme Court was not bullied by the far-left mob. Threats of violence against the justices did not win. And the truth is, pro-life Americans are not planning a night of rage. The reaction to this principled decision by the court, it must be peaceful. And the DOJ must step up to protect our justices, their families, churches, and pro-life pregnancy centers from unprovoked violence. To the DOJ, do not be silent. Do not stand back and uphold the rule of law. We live in a country that is based on the dignity of all human life. With that, we'll take some questions. Yes, ma'am.
Senator McCarthy, Justice Thomas, as part of this ruling, has said that he wants to revisit things like the Supreme Court's decision on gay marriage and contraception. What do you all say to that?
Well, the Supreme Court is a different branch of government. They can look at whatever comes before them. I just know in what we are doing, what we have today, is that life matters. That for so many years, life has stood up.
But would you all support
Yes, ma'am.
decisions being revisited?
The Supreme Court is a separate branch of government. They take their positions, yes.
If you are Speaker and ultimately what are some of the approaches you all think you can
Well, first and foremost, I believe in saving every life possible. Look at what we have done. Hyde Amendment, but more importantly, look at what the Democrats have done. For decades, that was a bipartisan position. Why did this new radical agenda, when the Democrats took the House, the Senate, and the White House, even the President Biden, who had supported that, removed that? Look at Ann Wagner's bill. And when you look at what we can do, we will continue to look wherever we can go to save as many lives as possible. Yes.
Peter, you touched on this a little bit, but current laws are still in place right now where the Attorney General is just not doing anything about it, it's mainly politics. What would you want to tell him specifically?
I would tell him in less than 140 days, things are going to change here. And he will have now a Congress that will call him up. He will now have the ability of a Congress to have oversight. He will now have a Congress that will hold him accountable. Thank you all, and most importantly, to America. I continue to pray, one, for the safety of everyone, but more importantly, we now have a voice for all life. Thank you, and God bless.
House Republicans here speaking as they are all praising Supreme Court for their recent decision. Do want to take us out to a couple of those different live pictures we have coming in here to our Live Now from Fox desk. A lot of reaction still pouring in with both abortion rights and anti-abortion. We have protesters as well as people gathering outside here. And of course, Live Now from Fox going to continue our coverage here. Want to show both sides of this ruling as well, especially as we've had a lot of people pouring in with reaction. Again, we just heard from some of those House Republicans. So next, I want to take us out to Gloria Allred. She leans towards the left. She was speaking with our Fox 11 team following this ruling. We're going to play it out here for you on Live Now from Fox. Do want to remind everyone, too, we do have President Biden, who is set to make remarks here at any moment. It was scheduled to take place at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I don't have shots inside of the White House quite yet. As soon as that does happen, of course, you'll see it up on your screen as well. So right now, going to head out to our Fox 11 team, who is just speaking with Attorney Gloria Allred on this issue here this morning.
First guest.
She was. Yeah.
So she's also had a very busy morning and an emotional morning. Let's go back to her. And Gloria, thank you again for hanging out and connecting back with us. This, you know, for people who are not familiar with your story, I was hoping you could just tell us why this matters so much to you and your personal connection to this case.
Yes, I have a personal connection because when I was in California, and I was in my 20s, and that was in the 1960s, I traveled to Mexico for a vacation. I went out with a doctor, a medical doctor with whom I had a date. He took me to, he asked me if we could go to the hospital where he had to see some patients first, and I said, fine. And then he said, well, I need to see a patient who's now in a hotel recovering. Will you go with me there? And I said, fine. And we went into the room, and then he pulled out a gun, and basically I was raped at gunpoint. I got pregnant. I came back to California, found out that I could not get a legal abortion in California. So I had an illegal one, illegal for a doctor or a nurse to perform it, but not illegal for me to get it. So I had somebody who did it for profit. I was left in a bathtub, hemorrhaging, 106-degree fever. The person who gave the abortion would not do anything for me. I ultimately got an ambulance, went to the hospital, and had to be packed in ice. And I was, you know, fortunately for me, my life was saved. So I know what the impact is of illegal and unsafe abortions, and that's what today many women are going to have to do. I want to emphasize that once in the 60s, California was anti-choice and put women's lives and health and girls' lives and health at risk by unsafe abortions. What we did is we organized. We did what Mother Jones said. We didn't agonize. We organized. We threw out a lot of anti-choice politicians, and we brought in pro-choice elected officials. And that's why we are now a blue state. That's why we are now a safe pro-choice state. That's why now we are going to be able to help women from other states to come to our haven state, California. And women and girls will not have to worry about whether abortion is safe and legal in California. So that's the power of political power. But we had to fight to win it. Nobody gave it to us. We had to organize and get this done. And we have to continue to make sure we have pro-choice elected officials in California. But in other states, women and girls' lives are at risk. As Planned Parenthood, which, by the way, is, I mean, I just have so much commendation for them to have operated and continue to operate to help women to have reproductive choices. But in so many other states, trigger laws are coming into effect, and those lives of those poor women and the young women and the rural women and the women of color are going to be at risk. And we have to help them to travel to California or to New York or to other haven states nearby them so that they can have more control over their lives. This is an anti-choice, anti-woman, misogynistic kind of Roe v. Wade overturning decision, and we cannot let it stand. So yes, the personal is political, the political is personal. We can all do something because we all have a stake in what happens now. If we can't control our lives, as has been said, from the skin in, we can't control our lives from the skin out. And we must fight back against mandatory motherhood. I'm happy about the women you just showed who said, you know, they're anti-choice, but, you know, they're happy, they've had children, they're beautiful children and all of that. That's fine. They have that choice. But other women don't have that choice now because of the because of Dobbs versus Jackson Supreme Court decision today. We need to respect the choice of every woman and every girl and not have someone else's religious ideology imposed on us. Trust women. That's not what the U.S. Supreme Court did today.
Gloria, let me, and not to belabor the horrific situation that caused you to seek an abortion, but it's an important point that I want to discuss with you with regard to this Supreme Court decision today, because it sounds like, based on everything that we've heard, that basically the Supreme Court has said that states can enact whatever abortion laws they want. It can be as restrictive as they want to be with them, which means then I would think that a state could enact a law banning abortion even in cases of rape and incest.
I'm so glad you pointed that out. And in fact, that's what a number of states are already done. And even in some states where a woman's life is endangered if she is forced to take a pregnancy to term. So yes, no exceptions for rape and incest, no exceptions in some states for a woman's life being endangered, no exceptions in some states for a woman to even take a pill to provide a medical abortion or to get that pill brought to her, sent to her, distributed to her. This is complete control over a woman's body, her life, and her future. A woman cannot enjoy equality. She cannot enjoy liberty. She cannot enjoy her rights if she cannot control her reproductive choices. And many states want to outlaw contraception as well. Men need to take note of this because they are going to have their partners, their wives, their significant others have their health and safety placed at risk as well. So the choice of men to talk to their partners and say, we should decide together, this is a time for you to terminate a pregnancy. And if both decide, that's not going to be possible. In some states, even if a parent tells their teenage daughter, we're going to help you get an abortion, in some states, the parents will be at risk of being sued or maybe in the future prosecuted for helping their own child to get an abortion. This is outrageous.
Gloria, I want to ask you, going back to those trigger laws, because it is a bit confusing for many people. We're talking about California potentially becoming a sanctuary state and people from other states having to come to states like California that has that right to that sort of reproductive health care. Should we, as of today, because, talking about these trigger laws, states like Oklahoma, one of those 13 states, the governor signed a bill into law that explicitly banned abortion. There was no confusion about it. The only protection, at least from my, non-legal understanding, it was Roe versus Wade. So should women in those states that have specifically mapped the ban out, as of today, is their access to abortion completely gone?
In many states it is, or will be within the next few days, weeks, or a month, because these trigger laws in different states take effect at different times. In other words, they are triggered by this decision. They will then come into, effect. And so look at the big smiles on some of the elected officials in some of these states. They're so excited that they could put women's life at risk and hurt young girls. Of course, they don't use that terminology, but that's the impact in the real world of what they're deciding. And why are they doing it? Why are they trying to control women? They're appealing to their base. A lot of their base, is the extreme right wing, is frankly a lot of men in the Republican Party, as opposed to more women who are Democrats. And so they're doing it for crass political reasons. They want to appeal to their base to get votes so they can be reelected. They don't, frankly, give a damn about women's lives or girls' lives, or the fact that they could die or be maimed from unsafe, illegal abortions. That isn't their priority. It is my priority.
We've touched on a number of these things, but Sandra Endo just handed me this list that she compiled, which I find to be interesting. Some of the things what people are talking about. What can the federal government do? What can feds do? Like allow abortion pills at pharmacies, ease restrictions on abortion pills, declare a public health emergency, which seems like such an extreme thing to do. Medicare costs. That's something people are wondering. Would Medicare cost traveling across state lines if someone, say, in Oklahoma wants to come to California? Some of these things that you've never thought about are now things that people are going to think about and wondering, what can the federal government do? Can the federal government have any room to step in and do these things?
Well, actually, the president is going to be speaking, I think, in about 10.
Expressly took away a constitutional right from the American people that it had already recognized. They didn't limit it, they simply took it away. That's never been done to a right so important to so many Americans. But they did it. It's a sad day for the court and for the country. 50 years ago, Roe v. Wade was decided and has been the law of the land since then. This landmark case protected women's right to choose, her right to make intensely personal decisions with her doctor, free from the interference of politics. It reaffirmed basic principles of equality, that women have the power to control their own destiny, and it reinforced a fundamental right of privacy, a right of each of us to choose how to live our lives. Now, with Roe gone, let's be very clear. The health and life of women in this nation are now at risk. As chairman and ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, as Vice President and now as President of the United States, I've studied this case carefully. I've overseen more Supreme Court confirmations than anyone today, where this case was always discussed. I believe Roe v. Wade was the correct decision as a matter of constitutional law and application of the fundamental right to privacy and liberty in matters of family and personal autonomy. It was a decision on a complex matter that drew a careful balance between a woman's right to choose earlier in her pregnancy and the state's ability to regulate later in her pregnancy. A decision with broad national consensus that most Americans of faiths and backgrounds found acceptable, and that had been the law of the land for most of the lifetime of Americans today. And it was a constitutional principle upheld by justices appointed by Democrat and Republican presidents alike. Roe v. Wade was a 7-2 decision, written by a justice appointed by a Republican president, Richard Nixon. In the 5 decades that followed Roe v. Wade, justices appointed by Republican presidents from Eisenhower, Nixon, and Reagan, George W. Bush, were among the justices who voted to uphold the principles set forth in Roe v. Wade. It was 3 justices named by one president, Donald Trump, who were the core of today's decision to upend the scales of justice and eliminate a fundamental right for women in this country. Make no mistake, this decision is a culmination of a deliberate effort over decades to upset the balance of our law. It's a realization of an extreme ideology and a tragic error by the Supreme Court, in my view. The court has done what it has never done before, expressly take away a constitutional right that is so fundamental to so many Americans that had already been recognized. The court's decision to do so will have real and immediate consequences. State laws banning abortion are automatically taking effect today, jeopardizing the health of millions of women, some without exceptions. So extreme that women could be punished for protecting their health. So extreme that women and girls who are forced to bear their rapist's child, with the child a consequence. It just stuns me. So extreme that doctors will be criminalized for fulfilling their duty to care. Imagine having young woman have to carry the child of incest as a consequence of incest. No option. Too often the case, the poor women are going to be hit the hardest. It's cruel. In fact, the court laid out state laws criminalizing abortion that go back to the 1800s as rationale. The court literally taking America back 150 years. This is a sad day for the country, in my view. But it doesn't mean the fight's over. Let me be very clear and unambiguous. The only way we can secure a woman's right to choose and the balance that existed is for Congress to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade as federal law. No executive action from the president can do that. And if Congress, as it appears, lacks the votes to do that now, voters need to make their voices heard. This fall, we must elect more senators and representatives who will codify women's right to choose into federal law once again. Elect more state leaders to protect this right at the local level. We need to restore the protections of Roe as law of the land. We need to elect officials who will do that. This fall, Roe is on the ballot. Personal freedoms are on the ballot. The right to privacy, liberty, equality, they're all on the ballot. Until then, I will do all of my power to protect a woman's right in states where they will face the consequences of today's decision. While the court's decision cast a dark shadow over a large swath of the land, many states in this country still recognize a woman's right to choose. So, if a woman lives in a state that restricts abortion, the Supreme Court's decision does not prevent her from traveling from her home state to the state that allows it. It does not prevent a doctor in that state from treating her. As the Attorney General has made clear, women must remain free to travel safely to another state to seek care they need. My administration will defend that bedrock right. If any state or local official, high or low, tries to interfere with a woman's exercising her basic right to travel, I will do everything in my power to fight that deeply un-American attack. My administration will also protect a woman's access to medications that are approved by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, like contraception, which is essential for preventative health care, mifepristone, which the FDA approved 20 years ago to safely end early pregnancies and is commonly used to treat miscarriages. Some states are saying that they'll try to ban or severely restrict access to these medications. But extremist governors and state legislators are looking to block the mail or search a person's medicine cabinet or control a woman's actions by tracking data on her apps she uses are wrong and extreme and out of touch with the majority of Americans. The American Medical Association, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists wrote to me and Vice President Harris stressing that these laws are not based on evidence and asking us to act to protect access to care. They say by limiting access to these medicines, maternal mortality will climb in America. That's what they say. Today, I'm directing the Department of Health and Human Services to take steps to ensure these critical medications are available to the fullest extent possible. And the politicians cannot interfere in the decisions that should be made between a woman and her doctor. And my administration will remain vigilant as the implications of this decision play out. I've warned about how this decision risks the broader right to privacy for everyone. That's because Roe recognized the fundamental right to privacy that has served as a basis for so many more rights that we've come to take for granted, that are ingrained in the fabric of this country. The right to make the best decisions for your health. The right to use birth control, a married couple in the privacy of their bedroom, for God's sake. The right to marry the person you love. Now, Justice Thomas said as much today. He explicitly called to reconsider the right of marriage equality, the right of couples to make their choices on contraception. This is extreme and dangerous path the court is now taking us on. Let me close with 2 points. First, I call on everyone, no matter how deeply they care about this decision, to keep all protests peaceful. Peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. No intimidation. Violence is never acceptable. Threats and intimidation are not speech. We must stand against violence in any form, regardless of your rationale. Second, I know so many of us are frustrated and disillusioned that the court has taken something away that's so fundamental. I know so many women are now going to face incredibly difficult situations. I hear you. I support you. I stand with you. The consequences and the consensus of the American people, core principles of equality, liberty, dignity, and the stability of the rule of law demand that Roe should not have been overturned. With this decision, the conservative majority of the Supreme Court shows how extreme it is, how far removed they are from the majority of this country. They've made the United States an outlier among developed nations in the world. But this decision must not be the final word. My administration will use all of its appropriate lawful powers, but Congress must act. And with your vote, you can act. You can have the final word. This is not over. Thank you very much. More to say this in weeks to come. Thank you.
Mr. President, do you still have confidence in the court? Do you still have confidence in the court, Mr. President?
You can see the president exiting without answering any questions. Of course, he is very upset with this decision, as many of our Democratic leaders across the country have been speaking out here ever since this decision came down. Want to take you back out to just some of those live pictures we have coming in here to our Live Now from Fox desk. More and more people continue to file into the Washington, D.C. area, just outside of the Supreme Court on both sides of the issue. We have both anti-abortion protesters as well as abortion rights activists as well. They are out here in full force. We're going to continue to keep an eye on these shots, especially since from time to time I've seen a couple of our cameras getting some of that interaction between the two groups, as it has been pretty heated here and is only going to continue to ramp up here throughout the day. But you heard President Biden just mention he is asking everyone who's going to be out there speaking their opinion to do so in an orderly fashion. Of course, they don't want to have any issues happen. They don't want to see after we had that leak back in May saying that this could be overturned. We saw quite a few different people and groups go out and be attacked, especially for those groups who were on either side. We had seen many people go into buildings and trash them, whether they were a Planned Parenthood type of location or even if they were an abortions right group as well. So right now on Live Now from Fox, we're going to continue giving you more of that reaction coming to us from across the country. Do want to show our viewers also that we've had some breaking news coming in here after this decision came down. There's been at least one person who's protesting this decision. Frederick Douglass Memorial Bridge is temporarily shut down. The District Department of Transportation has announced this, saying that there is safety concerns involving a protester, an activity that's going to remain in effect until further notice. You can see that person at the very top peak of the bridge there. Now, motorists and everyone is encouraged to plan ahead for their commute, especially as we're only going to see more traffic entering that area. They do have law enforcement officers as well well as first responders out here on scene. You can see even they have blown up a padding there on the bridge as well. So emergency personnel out here dealing with a protester on the bridge. This is the Frederick Douglass Memorial Bridge, which is temporarily shut down. We're going to take you into 3 boxes. We'll keep an eye here on this protester. We're also going to keep an eye on all of those folks who have been gathering outside of the Supreme Court, but also we'll take you out to Tampa, where we do have our Planned Parenthood leaders in the Tampa area. They are speaking after this ruling came down. Of course, a lot of states now going to be implementing their own rules and legislation ever since this decision came. Let's go ahead and bring that to you right here on Live Now from Fox.
EVESQUE. All right, I want to thank everybody again for coming out. My name is Elizabeth Baker. I'm the regional organizer for the Florida Planned Parenthood PAC in Tampa Bay. We're here today because of the opinion released by the Supreme Court of the United States, stating that they will uphold Mississippi's draconian abortion ban. The language used in this opinion has eviscerated protections for abortion access and has overturned 50 years of legal precedent clearly established by the Roe v Wade case in 1973. At Planned Parenthood, we are outraged and disgusted by this decision. 80% of Americans believe that abortion should be legal, meaning that this court, dominated by justices who are hostile to our freedom, has gone against the will of the people. This outrageous decision will fuel efforts by state politicians to ban abortion access across the United States and in Florida, forcing people to travel hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles in order to access vital care or else remain pregnant. And we know that abortion bans disproportionately harm Black, Latina, Indigenous, and other people of color, and people living in rural areas, people with low incomes, because of this country's legacy of racism, income inequality, and discrimination. Abortion bans strip us of our freedom to control our own bodies and are a product of the systemic barriers to care that too many in our communities face every single day. Abortion access should not be based on your zip code, your income level, your race, or your immigration status. That's why it's paramount that Floridians vote on August 23rd in the Florida primaries and on November 8th in the general election of this year for candidates who are committed to protecting and furthering abortion access and reproductive health care initiatives. As Floridians, we need to hold our political officials accountable by sending the message loud and clear that we will not tolerate policy and legislation that threatens our basic human right to bodily autonomy. And we can send this message with our vote. This court has failed us. This court has failed us. It has taken away the power to control our bodies, our lives, and our futures, and we believe everybody's body is theirs and theirs alone. We must have the freedom and the power to control our bodies and our lives. It is a fundamental human right. That means that no judge, no politician, no piece of legislation should ever have the ability to restrict personal medical decisions or determine the course of one's life. I'm here today with some folks who are going to share their stories. Stories about how the freedom to access reproductive health care, or the lack thereof, has impacted them and the course of their lives. I'm also here today to say that this decision will not stop us. We are not backing down. We will fight like hell to make sure that those who would threaten abortion access are voted out of office this year. And we'll do it together because even in the face of impossible odds, the people's collective voice will be heard. The people's collective voice will be heard. It will be heard in Tallahassee, it will be heard in Washington, D.C., and it will be heard in the ballot box on August 23rd and on November 8th, and it will not be ignored. I'll now invite our first speaker, Natasha Milburn, to speak. We'll hold all questions until the end, please. Natasha,
hello, everyone. What a way to start the day. It's going to take a moment to breathe and really be here. It's a pretty big impact. My name is Natasha Milburn, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a loud and proud queer cis female Air Force veteran and a fierce reproductive justice advocate. Currently, I'm an academic researcher designing a comprehensive and inclusive sexual health curriculum for youth in underserved and/or marginalized communities, and I'm a passionate, mindful art educator for youth of all ages. And I've had an abortion. To my very core, I believe everyone's life and body are their own, and it's the individual's right and choice to create their own path in deciding what they believe is best for them in their journey. I believe that in turn, it's the government's responsibility to provide the means for us to do so via accessible health care and historically factual, comprehensive sexual health education for everybody who wants or needs such fundamental human services. These services are vital, especially for those who already face societal health barriers, the LGBTQ+ community, BIPOC folks, those with disabilities, or who are from low-income home. And what hits heart most for me, adolescents who are scared and stuck without access to safe and illegal abortion. It was the summer before my high school senior year. I felt confused, alone, physically and mentally sick, and didn't understand what was happening to my body. After conducting a very brief Google search, which confirmed my fears, I bought a pregnancy test which tested positive. It was in that instant that I truly matured. A feeling I had never felt before nor since consumed me. An unconscious survival mode kicked in. I didn't know how, but I knew that I needed an abortion. Looking back, I am thoroughly impressed at the isolating challenges and heartbreaking hurdles my 16-year-old self went through to do what I absolutely knew was best for my future. Just as it is in Florida right now, in order for a minor living in Michigan to receive abortion care, they needed a guardian signed consent. Forcing me into even further premature adulthood, my religious family refused to give me the consent I needed. So alone, I found and made my way to an abortion clinic 4 hours away in Chicago. Although resolute and determined, a lost and scared teenager shouldn't have to cross state lines in the middle of the night alone to receive health care that was a human right given to me and us from the moment of birth. I hardly remember checking in, and having never had a women's wellness exam at that point in my life, I had no idea what to expect or where to expect it. They called me into a small cubicle to ask me questions and checked my vitals, then sent me back to the waiting room with an ultrasound picture. I was so confused and scared, having one mental panic attack after another, which felt like hours, until I finally heard my name. This was my time, this was my choice, and never once did I have a shred of a doubt. As the anesthesia set in, I remember the nurse saying, "It's okay, honey. This will be over soon. We'll get you on some good birth control, and you'll move on from this. You will move on from this." This statement gently guided me through the fears of the procedure, forced me past the guilt of wanting an abortion to begin with, and slashed away my shame for getting one. Support and care. It's what I deserved, not only as a sexually uneducated adolescent making sexually uneducated decisions, but it was what I deserved as a person. It's what we as the people deserve. We as humans deserve the right to legal and a safe abortion, especially when those humans are in a country that boasts of freedoms and liberty and whose leaders insist that they serve in justice for all. I remember when I was a child, and I used to be proud to be an American because at least I know I was free. These statements and songs were part of our indoctrination as youth, trying to convince us that there was something of this country to be proud of. Maybe there once was, roughly 50 years ago when Roe was passed, stating that abortion care is a fundamental human right. America claims to be or to have been the greatest country in the world. Some American even leaders still want to make America great again. But how can anything that strips away basic human rights of over 36 million childbearing people that they have sworn to represent and serve, be great? This decision puts the control over our health choices in the hands of political strangers. It makes this party of politicians and their politics the deciding factor in our plans of parenthood and of livelihood. This decision is a mistake. It's strictly unconstitutional. Every person deserves autonomy in their own life, for their own body and their freedom to determine their own future. And we will not stop until all people have access to every essential reproductive care option for whoever is in need of it. And we will continue our fight in disseminating progressive and comprehensive sexual health education to the youth of America. Education that will prevent life-changing experiences of unwanted teenage pregnancies such as my own, by providing knowledge, resources, services, and confidence in oneself, choices, and bodies to become a healthy sexual being. We are no longer the United States of America. This decision divides the states of America, and it tears at the very fabric of the flag that supposedly stands for being united and free. Worse, it further endangers the lives of liberty and justice for all that they claim to uphold. How is this liberty and justice for all? How is this justice at all? We will not back down. We will not stop. We will use these feelings of enragement and pain to turn them into power and empowerment. We will stand, we will march, we will scream and fight for our freedoms and rights until liberty and justice is truly served for all. I have had an abortion, and I am not ashamed. This unnecessary, traumatic adolescent experience shaped me into the woman I am today and who the woman I will continue to grow to be, whatever the reason. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll now have Tony Van Pelt.
Good morning. This is the first time the Supreme Court has gone back on a constitutional right. Politicians have no business interfering in our lives, especially women and her doctor. I'm here to tell you what it was like before Roe was decided in 1973. I was born in 1947. I'm 74 years old. When I was 19, I had an illegal abortion. When I found out I was pregnant, there was absolutely no question that I would have an abortion, whatever it took. My life was just beginning, and I knew how horrible, how unnecessarily horrible the women in my family suffered because of the interference of the government and religion into a woman's right to control her own body. In those days, you asked at a club for the phone number. I made contact and was instructed to come alone and to bring $400 in cash. It was hard for me to scrape up that kind of money back then. Women were also not allowed to have credit in their own name, so I could not get a loan. It was stormy and dark out as I drove to the address I was given. Driving home from the abortion, a driver ran a red light and broadsided my car. I was thrown out and hit my head on a curb. I landed in a hospital, ill, in pain, confused. I didn't want to be examined for fear of being arrested. I refused treatment and I left. It turned out I was so severely injured in the accident, I had to move home and was out of work for a month. The accident dislodged the tube inserted in my cervix. I had to go a second time to another location to have the abortion completed. I was put in a tub of scalding hot water while two women poured more water, heated on the stove, into the tub. That's all I can remember. To this day, I only shower. I aborted blood clots of tissue into the toilet at home the next day. It was painful. I was alone, but I did it. And I was so relieved. There was and is no shame in having an abortion. And I was lucky. I didn't suffer any long-lasting ill effects like so many other women did. A few weeks later, I received a phone call from a young woman I didn't know. She was asking for the number. I gave it to her. She ended up in the hospital surrounded by police. She gave them my name and told them that I worked for an airline. The police located me at my job. 3 of them showed up and demanded I give them the phone number. They said that they would arrest me on a felony charge for aiding and abetting an illegal abortion. I refused. They came twice more to my workplace to bully me. On their 3rd visit, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving at 11 p.m., they arrested me. Their plan was to intimidate me into cooperating by keeping me in jail over the long weekend. Judges didn't sit on the holidays, so I wouldn't be able to bail out. They moved me from jail to jail that night until I ended up in downtown Cleveland City Jail, a filthy, miserable place. I was body searched in the garage before they took me in. I had my fingerprints taken and my photo taken, and I was strip searched. I refused to cooperate with them when they asked me for my name and other personal information. Everything was taken from me, including my medications. The cell was filthy, with cockroaches running around. The toilet was more or less a hole in the...
All right, once again, thank you to everyone who's been watching here with us on Live Now from Fox. We've been hearing some stories outside of the Tampa Planned Parenthood as more reaction continues to pour in here after this ruling. Do want to show our viewers just some of those live pictures we have coming in here to our Live Now from Fox desk outside of the Supreme Court. Earlier this morning, before the opinion had dropped, there was not as many people outside of the gates that have been put up surrounding the Supreme Court, but now you can see a lot of people on both sides of the issue. We've had both anti-abortion as well as abortion rights protesters all stepping out here to share their opinions after this ruling came down. This has ended a constitutional protections for abortion that has been placed nearly 50 years. It's a decision by a conservative majority. It overturned Roe V Wade, and today's outcome is expected to lead to abortion bans in roughly half the states. Let's go ahead and take a look at the map that we have here showing just some of those states. The red, you can see a ban already in place. The dark blue, no ban. That peachy pink color is where a ban would be triggered, and the light pink, that's Montana. They are likely to ban abortion as well. So did want to at least break down these different states where they stand here at this time. We've already seen some of those state leaders speaking out earlier here today. We're going to continue giving you more reaction here on Capitol Hill, including taking you out to New York, where we do have any moment New York City Mayor Eric Adams. He's going to be speaking out after this decision and ruling came here today. We'll have it live, run unfiltered for you right here on Live Now from Fox in just 2 minutes. Welcome back here to Live Now from Fox, where we have been keeping on top of this breaking news that came down this morning after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the landmark 1973 Roe V Wade case that legalized abortion nationwide, letting states have the final say according to the final opinion that was previously leaked out and finally issued here today. The ruling on the case, known as Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, sets in motion a series of events that will likely lead to abortion being banned or severely restricted in roughly half of our 50 states. You can see here there's a number of people who have stepped out in front of the Supreme Court here in Washington, D.C. Do you want to remind people, viewer discretion advised? I've seen quite a few inappropriate signs, but there's so many voices being given out here on this issue here today. Live Now from Fox's job is to bring it all to you, let you make your own decisions. We've been playing both sides of this issue. Earlier here this morning, we did have some of our House Republicans. They gave reaction praising this decision. And of course, we heard from President Biden just a little bit earlier here today. He, of course, was saying the decision is a tragic error by the court, and he's going to do everything in his power to try to help states with this opinion that just came down this morning. I do want to show you just some more of the reaction that's been coming to us. We do have right now on the Frederick Douglass Memorial Bridge a protester who has made his way to the top of the bridge, causing a shutdown here temporarily as first responders and emergency personnel are outside here. This closure, obviously, for safety concerns involving this protest activity, and will be shut down until further notice. There's a lot of emergency personnel surrounding here as this person continues to stand on top of this bridge. It's been one of those shots we've been having in our triple box as we've continued to hear a different reaction coming in. So I'm going to leave that up in our triple box. We're going to be now headed out to New York City. We do have not only New York City Mayor Eric Adams, who is going to be giving some reaction, but other New York City leaders also reacting to today's decision. We're going to jump into it live, raw and unfiltered, right here for you on Live Now from Fox.
Women in Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma deserve the same rights as women in New York. But today, 36 million Americans, nearly half of the women of reproductive age in this country, stand to lose safe and legal abortion access. Now, pregnancy and abortion are deeply personal matters. It is because these issues are so important that we must have the right to make our own choices. No one can really know what the circumstances are of others. And that is especially true for judges and for politicians, many of whom will never be pregnant. I know this firsthand. I had an abortion. It was the right decision for me and my husband. And so today, I share your anger, I share your disappointment, I share your frustration, and I share your outrage. But also today, we in the Adams administration want to send a very clear message that we will take the necessary steps to fully protect both women in this city and those who come to our city to access the freedom which may no longer exist in their hometowns. Today and always in this city, women will have full autonomy over their bodies and the right to make their own medical decisions. But then tomorrow, and every day until reproductive health access in this country is fully restored, we in the Adams administration will be right here with you, hand in hand. It will not be an easy fight, but it is a fight that we can win. So let's get to work. I'd now like to introduce the Deputy Mayor for Operations, Mira Joshi.
Hello, I'm Mira Zoshi, Deputy Mayor for Operations. Women have children. Women overwhelmingly are responsible for raising those children. This reality, without a doubt, frames the quality of women's lives. Whether we work, where we work, what times we can work, and our ability to engage in and contribute to society. For women, safe, I'll be louder than him. Legal abortion is the tool. women, safe, legal abortion is the tool that allows us to break out of these constraints. And today, the Supreme Court stole that tool. They stole our freedom. They stole the wide open future of our sisters and our daughters. They stole the boundless dreams and aspirations of young women across the nation. Our female role models often say, "Young girl, this can someday be you." But today, the foundational premise of that statement has been shattered. And with this theft in broad daylight, the court sent a deeply disturbing, spine-chilling message. Women in America, you're not worthy. You're not worthy of having the ability to make a choice that will allow you to pursue your dreams, follow your ambition, break cycles of poverty, and live full and complete lives. This event is packed with women, many of whom's presence here today is a direct result of having choice. And it's a stunning example of the power of that choice. This is a room symbolic of powerful, colorful gatherings across the country. Now imagine a world where many of these valuable creative figures are absent. The strong women to the left and right of you, all because they can't make a choice over their body, and because they can't make a choice, they can't participate. That's a dark world. That's a world in which we all lose. So let's not get confused. Today, the nation was robbed of the hard-fought right for women to participate in all parts of our society. It's a right that allows our nation to be a more complete and a more just one. So let that ugly and simple truth be what burns in our souls and feeds our fight forward. Thank you. I'd like to turn it over to our Deputy Mayor, Sheena Wright.
I so deeply appreciate the sisterhood that we have here in the city. I am not as eloquent today as my sister deputy mayors, and I don't have prepared remarks. Quite frankly, I was stunned. Like the wind was knocked out of me today. We knew it was coming, but it's like, I was like, no, they won't do that. They won't take away this fundamental right that women enjoy in this country. And when it happened, I was just on my heels. I couldn't function the rest of the day. And the shock and outrage that I know we all feel, as has been said, has to be met with a fight back. I am grateful that we live in the city of New York, in the state of New York, but I weep for all of our sisters who live in all of those states who are gonna be shamed, trying to shame them. They're gonna be persecuted. This is a horrible, horrible outcome. But I know, particularly with these women here and others across the country, we will continue to fight, and we will get on the right side of this issue. While we are stunned today, we're outraged, we're in despair, we have not lost, because we will continue to press forward. The last thing I'll say is, as I thought about today, I thought, what's next? What's next? Clearly, anything is possible if this fundamental right has been taken from us. So we have to stay vigilant, we have to stay focused, and we have to keep pressing forward. I want to introduce our Chief Housing Officer, Jessica Katz.
Hi, everybody. I wasn't planning on coming and speaking here today, but listening to these amazing women and their stories, I felt compelled to. And I want to say something to everybody here, and particularly the men here today, is to just be gentle with the women in your life today. Because I'm relieved to be living in New York City, on this difficult day, but it's also cold comfort because it still feels like a fundamental right has been taken away from us. As you've heard a few times here today, there's a few different kinds of abortion stories, and I've experienced a few of them. There's the kind where you're so young and it's the wrong guy and the wrong time, and you have your whole life ahead of you, and you don't think that that should be determined by one moment of bad judgment. There's the kind where you're having a miscarriage and you're in the middle of fertility treatments that didn't work again, and you're just desperate for it to be over so you can have the baby that you so desperately want. And I can't even imagine what it would have been like in that moment to have to beg a judge for mercy, as so many women across the country are now going to have to do. And then there's the kind where you have amazing family and the children that you want and the career that you've aspired to your whole life, and your family feels complete, and you don't think that another pregnancy and another baby is what's best for you or your family in that moment. So all those kinds of stories. There's a few other kinds that I've been very lucky not to have to experience. So I want to just make sure that everyone here is gentle and kind to each other today, and just to remind everybody how much all these amazing women on the stage today, we owe not just our careers that we love, but also the families that we love, to being able to have that right to have an abortion. So thank you so much to everyone who's here, and with that, Mayor Eric Adams.
Thank you, and I thought it was imperative that we heard from the women of the office, and I just want to bring on, before I speak, a woman who has been very much part of my career and have really watched me develop into the person that I am, and I just want her to be part of showing what the women of this office feel and what they are experiencing. Ingrid?
As our first deputy mayor and all of our other deputy mayors expressed, today is a tragic day, a sad day. When women cannot make a choice of what they want to do with their own bodies, it's completely unacceptable. For a woman who is raped, who didn't want to engage in having sex, and becomes pregnant, to have to give birth to a baby that she may be ill-equipped to nurture is unacceptable. Deputy Mayor Ann William Isom said that whatever you feel like doing today, you should do. If you want to protest, protest. I say to you this: there will come a time when the opportunity will present itself for this tragic ruling to be reversed. Everyone who is outraged, you must exercise your right to vote for the proper president who will appoint Supreme Court justices who will see and understand the magnitude and the scale of what has happened today.
All right, so we are listening in here. New York City Mayor Eric Adams hosting this event with other fellow city leaders. We're going to continue listening in live. You can hear in the background some abortion rights activists outside of this event speaking out. And we have definitely been seeing both sides stepping out, especially in that Washington, D.C. shot. Do want to remind our viewers, viewer discretion advised, as we have a lot of opinions being shared here today. We're going to send some viewers off to a 2-minute break as we continue to listen in live here in New York City on Live Now from Fox.
The proper person who can make the right size appointments. And without ado,
conceive, made a determination on what will happen to the women of this city and country. Every decision not to have a child comes with it a story. And each one of those individual stories are so important, they're so private, they're so significant. And no woman just decides automatically. It's a deep thought to make that determination. And now to rob them of that ability to do so is probably one of the most darkest periods in our country. So what a battle we are in. This is so surreal what is happening in our country. It is as though everything we fought for to become the social conscience of the globe is being dismantled right now. And this is the second time in a week that a radical Supreme Court has issued a decision aimed directly at safety, health, freedoms of New Yorkers and all Americans. A second time in a week. What a warning sign. This decision will fundamentally alter the role of women in our society by constraining their freedoms and challenging their autonomy. A direct attack at women in this country. It takes us backwards in a dark time in our nation's history, when women used to go to places and have unsafe pregnancy terminations, particularly those poorer and black and brown communities. We know that. We're coming with this knowledge when we make this change. They were targeted in these communities. After today, young women will come of age with fewer rights than their parents. They come of age with fewer rights than their parents. Fewer alternatives. Won't be able to make these decisions. It sends chills down my spine. This is more than an issue of reproductive rights and public health. This is a decision about controlling a woman's body. Controlling her body. You can't legislate that. You can't put in place some Supreme Court decision on that, the right to control your body. This is about who decides, who rules, who has power, and who's deprived of it. And right now, the American people are being deprived of that fundamental power to choose one's destiny. Whether they are allowing dangerous people to buy and carry deadly weapons or banning women from making their own health decisions, the far right, enabled by this court, has declared war on the American people. War on public safety, and our pursuit of happiness. They want to talk about constitutions. Somewhere I read that you have the right to pursue happiness. You just robbed that right away. The decision in these two consecutive cases, Roe v. Wade and Bruin and Dobbs, also highlight a fundamental hypocrisy on the issues of personal rights and states' rights. When it comes to our bodies, we have no rights. But when it comes to their guns, they have every right. This is not wise jurisprudence or reasonable argument. This is a power grab. The delegitimizing the court even as it undermines our freedoms. While there is talk of history in these decisions, there's little acknowledgement of the reality. That is what we are facing in this court, including the reality of how this decision would play out for those already struggling with poverty and inequality, with racism and other crises. The reality that most Americans face, especially in poorer parts of this country. The court's dissenting opinion highlights that this court is now voting politically and not judicially. In my view, This decision signals that overturning Roe v. Wade is only the beginning of a long-range plan to dismantle individual rights and roll back social progress in the service of minority rule. From marriage equality, something I fought for on the Senate floor, to the rights of contraceptions, from voting rights to human rights, the court intends to destroy long-established protections and turn back the clock on the progress that many have fought so hard for. This is their beginning, but this is not our ending to fight against the Supreme Court and use our powers. And as Deputy Mayor William Isom has indicated, we are going to step up, because this is the city of fighting on behalf of all. We will step up and ensure those women across this country that need a safe haven, we will ensure they get information and ensure that our healthcare facilities are there to stand with them. And let's be clear, we're not standing idly by. We're working to inform the public of their rights in New York and ensuring the safety and security of everywhere. New York will be the safe haven for America and for the women of this country. All Americans must have a legal right to reproductive health care in any kind, including abortion. Everyone must be free to live their own lives as they choose without being constrained to retrograde in state-sponsored dominance. Anything less is an affront to our fundamental rights and must be fought with fierce resistance. And in New York and all over this nation, that fierce resistance will rise. New York is the place where freedom is defined, and rightfully so. Our demographics, our ethnicity, our diversity is reflective of every country and every state in this country. New Yorkers aren't going to stand by and let the will of the majority of Americans be bypassed. They won't be undermined by a cabal of activist judges with a clear political agenda. We must use our power of protest, as was mentioned, and our sacred right to vote, as Ingrid mentioned, to stop this assault on our individual liberties. And now more than ever, it's time for Congress not to sit on past precedent. Let's codify abortion into law. Let's pass the law that states women have the right to choose their body. This is our moment, New York. This is our moment, America. Let's step up and reach that moment. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions on time.
All right. So once again, city leaders out of New York here speaking after this ruling coming down here this morning. We are giving you both sides, both anti-abortion groups as well as those who are fighting for abortion rights. Listening in here with New York City Mayor Eric Adams says he's going to be getting some questions from the media. Just a heads up, some viewers going to be going out to a 2-minute break as we continue to listen in here live, raw, and unfiltered.
You may be a reporter, but you're emotionally attached to this issue. And I can tell that. As a woman, you are offended.
abortions, as we've seen in states that already make abortions more difficult. This is going to increase the number of unsafe abortions. It's going to increase the number of unsafe pregnancies. So this is a direct harm on women, in addition to snatching their rights and their choice. For the city of New York, we're working to expand access to medication abortion in our sexual health clinics. We're working to expand the provider capacity and the number of abortions conducted at our public hospital system. And most importantly, we're looking at also supporting people who want to come to our city to get access to care, to get the supports they need, things like transportation, lodging, food, support so that they can travel to our city and get taken care of holistically. And so we'll be announcing plans over the coming days, weeks, and months. And I'm eager to do that with partnership with all these fantastic leaders here.
Anti-abortion advocates have really deeply held religious beliefs, and they see this as a religious issue, sort of moral imperative. What do you say to them?
I'll say the same thing we would say to anyone. As Dr. Fassan pointed out, this is a health issue, and particularly in poorer communities. Access to quality health care is a long-time fight. As we look at what happens when unwanted pregnancies, as Ingrid pointed out, one could be the victim of a crime. I believe all of us need to look inward and state that we should never dismantle a woman's right to choose her body. I don't know any law that has been put in place, or ruling that has been put in place, that allow men not to have the right over their bodies. So why can't we do the same for women? Our law department has been extremely busy from the terrible ruling that was handed down yesterday to this. Judge Sylvia Hines Radix is here. She's going to be partnering with our chief counsel. We are communicating with lawyers all across this country to really combat these two issues, but also to look at the other issues on the horizon. This is really the beginning of the actions, I believe, of the Supreme Court. And we're going to look at everything that's possible for New York to utilize what's within our scope of authority to push back on rulings such as this.
Could you talk a little bit about folks who feel under siege? So abortion is protected in New York by state law, but folks are worried that the Supreme Court could come for the state's abortion statutes next. People are worried that the Supreme Court could come for gay marriage next, that it could come for the contraception next. What do you say to folks who look at, well, if Roe V Wade can get banned, what protects every other sort of modern civil right?
I would say to New Yorkers and Americans, be very afraid, be very afraid. And that fear should turn into mobilization. That fear should play out as we make a decision of electing the right people to make the decision on who's going to be our Supreme Court justice. 6-3 right now. I believe that this is a real plan to look at all the things that they've been waiting to dismantle taking place. So we can't allow fear to stymie us, to sit still. We must allow that fear to motivate us to ensure that we could balance out this court. I never thought we would see the court use politics or personal beliefs to get in the way of what the American people want. So this is an alarming, concerning time. And if we ignore that, and believe as though that this is just two issues that were handed down, this is not an overall plan, that's a big mistake. So what does that call for? That calls for women rights activists to partner with those from the LGBTQ plus community, to partner with those with immigration rights, to partner with those with voting rights. We can't remain divided. We have to be united to pursue, because if we ignore what happened to women today, they could happen to the members of the LGBTQ plus community tomorrow, immigrants, voting rights. All of these issues are in play, and we have to unite together and say we are fortifying our front to fight this.
spite of it or because of it will actually make abortion services more widely available in New York than they were before.
Well, and I understand what you're saying, NJ, but it's just not about New York. There's no one here in this room that does not have a family member outside the state. And if we basically say, well, you know what, we dodged a bullet, then that is not who we are as a city. This city has always reached beyond our borders to state that we are in this together. This city, there's something special about New York. We are the social conscience of this country. And the reason we're here is not because of what is impacting us directly, but what is impacting our country indirectly. So if one of their children decide to move to another state, their child may be in that state and they're not going to have the rights that they had here. So that is why this is so important to move this to the national level. We're going to do what we have to do here and make sure this is a safe haven, but we need the national government to step up with the same level of vigilance that we're seeing here.
Are you saying that we will have more services in New York because of, in spite of what the Supreme Court decided?
Dr. Fassan and the Deputy Mayor William Isom, our team is sitting down. As soon as we thought this was on the horizon, we started thinking about what could we do. And we're going to continue to fortify the grounds here, and both of them and their entire team is looking at this. This must be a safe haven for people who are seeking refuge from what is happening in their state.
For somebody who's going to be in one of these states, I know you touched on this, but could you expand a little more on this plan to offer transportation or some subsidies to get here? Will that also even extend to legal protection in their state since it's very stringent? And the other thing is, in New York City, are you going to put on more police patrols at locations where abortions are already there in case there's any sort of protest or retail violence?
We're all going through economic challenges. We don't have an open-ended purse to everyone in this country that desires to give transportation. Whomever comes here for assistance, we will be here for that. And that is what we're going to do. We're going to see what we could do with the minimum amount of resources for those that we can give transportation to, but we're also asking our corporate entities. There's no reason all of our corporations can't come together and put together some form of pot to help those who are seeking the right to have an abortion. When it comes down to police, I spoke with the police commissioner this morning. We thought we had a suspicious package at a site where someone was protesting at, or protesters were there. We're going to remain vigilant at all of these locations to ensure that no one is put in harm's way, no one is threatened, and no one is put in a position where they will be harassed out of their right to have an abortion if they choose to do so.
All right, New York City leaders here on the abortion rights side of this ruling speaking out, saying that they are going to be implementing laws and rules in place to continue to support those who are seeking an abortion. He's also speaking about people who may be stepping out overnight and into the weekend after this ruling came down, saying, of course, they want to keep everything as peaceful as possible. That's something President Biden had even mentioned earlier here today. Let's go ahead and take a look at what Attorney General Merrick Garland had said just earlier here, releasing a statement, a very lengthy one. We kind of broke it up into a couple different paragraphs today, releasing this statement after the Supreme Court decision came down, saying today the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey and held that the right to abortion is no longer protected by the Constitution. The Supreme Court has eliminated an established right that has been an essential component of women's liberty for half a century, a right that has safeguarded women's ability to participate fully and equally in society. And in renouncing this fundamental right, which it had repeatedly recognized and reaffirmed, the court has upended the doctrine of hysteresis, a key pillar of the rule of law. Now, the Justice Department strongly disagrees with the court's decision. This decision deals with a devastating blow to reproductive freedom in the United States. It will have an immediate and irreversible impact on the lives of people across the country, and it will be greatly disproportionate in its effects, with the greatest burdens felt by people of color color and of those limited financial means. Now, there was a lot of comments again surrounding people stepping out in disagreement. We'll, of course, be bringing you much more reaction right here on Live Now from Fox, including some of our representatives were stopping by, speaking with our camera crews on Capitol Hill. It's all coming up right here on Live Now from Fox in just a few moments. Here to Live Now from Fox. It has been a busy morning ever since the Supreme Court ruling came down just earlier here today. Thanks so much for being here with us. I'm Christy Larson. We have been giving you full coverage ever since that opinion was released, and we do appreciate all of our viewers tuning in. Our job here at Live Now from Fox is to continue to gather all of the different reaction that's been pouring in from across the country, present it to you, let you make your own decisions, especially since we've had both sides speaking out. Earlier here today, we had House representatives who were on the Republican side, who were there in the court or in the Capitol celebrating after this had been overturned. Whereas then we also had President Biden. He had made some remarks, obviously leaning towards the left on the Democratic side. We've heard from Nancy Pelosi as well. They are sharing their disappointment. President Biden even reminding viewers and everyone who was listening to his speech this morning that this could mean that your vote coming up on the ballot this fall is going to be very important. Roe V Wade going to be part of that ballot. So we're going to be playing both sides of reaction, continuing to do that here for you. Want to show you just a couple live pictures we have coming in here to our desk, especially as we do have more people starting to gather outside of the Supreme Court. We have just continued to see more and more folks piling in. Do want to say viewer discretion advised, as a lot of signs are up being waved around here on Capitol Hill, especially as we get into these later hours. You know, more people only going to continue to step out and speak their opinions, which of course we'll continue to keep track of right here for you. I'm going to take us out to just some of that reaction from our leaders on Capitol Hill. Earlier, just a little bit ago, we had not only our representatives on the steps, but we also had more who were inside on the House floor as well, giving us some different remarks. So let's go ahead, listen in to just some of those leaders as they were leaving the Capitol. Our camera crews were catching up with them to get some of that initial reaction. Let's listen in to what they had to say on this major decision made here today.
Look, what you're seeing is a clear choice. The MAGA Republicans want to criminalize abortion in all 50 states, and the Supreme Court decision makes that possible with one law if they take control of the Congress. Democrats are going to protect Roe v. Wade. That's the choice. It's that simple.
But is this going to be a bigger issue than the economy in the midterms?
Look, it's not an either or. We should be talking about the economy. We should be talking about our plan to lower costs for families. We have a plan. But their priority is going to be to ban abortion in all 50 states. And that's the choice the voters are going to get to make.
Abortion has never been a top issue for Democratic voters heading to the polls. Is that going to change this year?
What I'm telling you is that we should be talking about growing our economy, getting our costs down, getting the price of the pump down. And that's why the MAGA Republican obsession with criminalizing abortion